What's up everybody, I'm your Thinking Cap Benji and welcome back to Best FPL Captain. We've been riding this golden Salah streak for quite a while, but he's got a much tougher fixture in Game Week 21. Am I pivoting off him? Am I sticking with him? Let's find out. Thinking Cap activated. Recent Salah form has produced a bucket load of points, but it was actually Haaland who was last week's best captain. Having both of them in my top two is a sign that we're on the right track, but after reassessing my process, I realized that there were a few factors I could have weighted better in my final rankings. The biggest one I underestimated was the weather, because we did hear about that massive snowstorm due to hit Liverpool exactly on Derby Day. I got that info about a day before the deadline, and that should have been enough to push Haaland into first. Remember guys, that my rankings, they can change. They can actually change based off new information, new factors that we get before the deadline, so make sure you're following at least one of my socials to access that. Isak scored again in the wildcard spot. He's actually dominating the early captaincy polls with over 50% backing on YouTube as well as Twitter. And you know what? It actually makes sense because he's got a great home fixture on paper against Wolves. Isak's your only Wednesday option. The other three premiums kick off on Tuesday night. So if you're someone who likes watching your captain after everyone else has played, then Isak could be the one for you. The Tuesday options do look a little more unpredictable, and Nottingham Forest, they shouldn't be regarded as an easy game for Liverpool. Just 7 goals conceded in 9 games at home. Only Arsenal has a better home defensive record, and historically, Salah's points history at the City ground implies the same: 1 start and 1 blank in this exact fixture, which makes Salah have the worst historical record this week. But just the 1 game played, so there's not really that much we can read into it. His home record against them is a little bit more positive, 2 goals in 3 starts, so I wouldn't rule Mo out of the running just yet. The other 3 are yet to blank against their upcoming opposition. Isak's the only one with a 2-game sample size, so he's got a little bit of an edge heading into fixture analysis. Brentford and Wolves are the top 2 fixtures to target this week. Both teams average more defensive errors per game, and they concede more big chances per game compared to Bournemouth and Forest. Ethan Pinnock's injury points to a centre-back partnership of Vandenberg and Collins for that City game. I don't think Thomas Frank does deploy the back 5 considering the current available options for Brentford, and that's excellent news for Haaland captaincy. If we compare Isak's matchup versus Haaland's matchup, I'd actually probably say Erling has the better one of the two, because Wolves use a back 5 formation and most of their chances conceded have come down both flanks rather than in central areas. Brentford are slightly weaker in the middle of the pitch compared to Wolves, having conceded 85 chances in that zone. They've only conceded more down their left flank. So all factors considered, I do think Brentford and Wolves are exactly level as the most targetable fixtures on offer. Forest, clearly the least targetable, boasting top 3 defensive data in the league this season, but I do believe Salah has got the best matchup out of all of the Liverpool attackers in that game. Think about it, right? It'll be Jota versus Milenkovic and Murillo. It'll be, and that's because Darwin Núñez is suspended for that game. Then it'll be Diaz or Gakpo facing up against Ola Aina, which leaves Salah against one of Nico Williams, who's the one who's been starting recently, or the out-of-form Moreno. He's been benched across the last 3 league fixtures. Either way, I'm still expecting this to be a really tough game for Mo, because I'm expecting Nuno Santos to deploy the double up on Salah, or he might even go with a back 5, which would put Salah up against a center back and a wing back in that fixture. So at least all I know is all of these possibilities point towards this being a fixture where Mo's going to be marked very tightly, which does impact his captaincy potential. For Bournemouth, I do consider them a slightly better fixture than Forest, but it's not that big of a gap. 74 chances conceded down the right zone does make sense because left back Kirkes is quite attacking, but Iraola probably sets him up in a more defensive position, especially because both of his starting strikers, Enes Ünal and Evan Nilsson, both have picked up long-term injuries, and for me, having no number 9s available is a big concern for Bournemouth, and it does improve Bournemouth's targetability because they are a team very reliant on their press. The lack of a proper number 9 in this Iraola system will mean less hold-up play, less possession, less high turnovers, and more chances for Chelsea. If you're a fan of Isak Captain, you'll be happy to see the recent uptick in his midweek points history. Isak's blank rate is down to just 20% thanks to his recent form, which earns him a little more trust. For captaincy, Haaland's profile indicates big explosive potential. He's boasting the highest double-digit haul rate on offer. He's not been in the greatest midweek away form, but his form is the same as Salah at 6. Apart from the 18-pointer for Mo, it's been pretty dry on all fronts in these midweek away fixtures. A sub 6 average points is a concern, especially for a premium midfielder, but in his only midweek away game this season, Salah returned 18 points at St. James's Park. Palmer doesn't have enough stats to qualify for comparison in this category, but in the 3 midweek home games he has started, Palmer's returned in all 3, and his historical records so far, they do show early signs of positive midweek preference. Now, all 4 of these output demons will be playing around the evening time on their game days, and currently Palmer's got the strongest historical record, hauling in 60% of starts. His career high 26-pointer was a late night midweek game at Stamford Bridge. All of Palmer's starts in late fixtures were during the week except for his most recent 3-pointer. That was a game this season, a Sunday game versus Brentford, which was a very late kickoff time for a Sunday game in the Premier League. So I do consider that game a little bit of an outlier. Isak has performed the worst in these late night kickoffs, blanking in 67% of starts. His lack of historical explosivity is a big concern, and the appeal does drop off. In the current captaincy meta, strikers need to have close to a perfect captaincy profile in all categories to be able to compete with some of these premium talisman midfielders, because Palmer can just fart and hit 10 points. Same with Salah, he's the exact same. When Saka was fit, it was the exact same. So for me, when I look at Isak, I need a lot for me to be very happy to captain him. And if I can actually compare his profile to Haaland, Haaland actually smashes him in all categories. Extreme consistency across the last 5, joint top with Salah on form. Haaland offers explosive potential with his double-digit haul rate, almost in the sub 40s. That's absolutely insane, and it's a very, very impressive game week profile from the Earl of Norway. Salah's got a decent haul rate as well, but in these late night away fixtures, he's blanked in over 50% of starts. Unusual inconsistency from the FPL King. All of the Tuesday options have their minutes projections maxed at 90 predicted. Tougher fixtures makes talisman more relied upon, and in doing so, it also makes their minutes more nailed. If you're someone who weighs rest day recovery very highly in your final decision making, then Palmer and Haaland should receive upticks in your rankings. Both of them got 10 recovery days. That's the most. Isak gets 8 days of rest ahead of Wolves, but look at the turnaround to Bournemouth. It's 3 days turnaround. That tight turnaround combined with Eddie Howe's comments on Isak's recent hamstring niggles, those factors point to an early sub for Isak. I think 8 days rest before Wolves will be enough to get Isak past 70 minutes, but I seriously doubt he'll play more than 80. Look, this will be a little bit of a surprise because I know how highly he's been rated this week from a captaincy perspective, but for me, he can't go any higher than wildcard captain. He's not very durable. Across his Premier League career, he's, been subbed early with injuries numerous times. It's countless. And for me, I don't have that trust with him. And because Eddie Howe has been telling us, he is struggling a little with his hamstring, he's feeling it a little, there's just too much risk for me to put him in my top 3. Like I said before, forwards, they need basically a perfect captaincy profile for them to compete captaincy-wise against these talisman midfielders. And without the minutes, with the quick turnaround in Newcastle's schedule, there's just too many red flags for me. If you're someone who's fine with taking on those risks, if you think Isak can do the damage against Wolves in 75 minutes, then feel free to go with him. I'm expecting him to gain a ton of EO because I think a lot of people will go for the Isak captaincy just because of the fixture, and just because I'm not too hot on him doesn't make him a bad option. Moving into the top 3, let's switch it up. And start with second place, which goes to Cole Palmer. Fully rested, 10-day recovery time, maximized minutes projections, but the problem is I don't really like the Bournemouth fixture all that much. It's not a fixture where I would take it out of the bag and say, hey, if I could pick any fixture on offer, I would pick Bournemouth at home to target for captaincy. No, that's not the case. I think it's a very tough fixture. I do consider Bournemouth's striker injuries as a very big positive for Palmer. For me, it boosts their clean sheet potential. I expect the Iraola press to be less effective, and I see Chelsea gaining more possession, but they're not a bunch of bums from the Championship, Bournemouth. They're a very, very good team, and their defensive numbers have been decent as well. So I'm a little worried as well You know why? Because this season, I watched the reverse fixture earlier, and Lewis Cook was on Palmer for the entire 90. Palmer was man-marked out of that game, and that's something Iraola definitely put in place before the start of that one. So I'm hoping things can be a little bit different for him and Chelsea on home turf. In terms of kickoff performance, Palmer's got the strongest historical preference towards late night games out of all 4 options. He likes playing at the bridge during the week as well. He's got a very strong record there in midweek rounds, and he'll be my captain this week because Erling Haaland takes first place on my rankings in 21. Now, I don't own Haaland, but I'll be backing him in my personal captaincy model because his overall profile is fantastic. No big red flags, reliable in midweek away fixtures, and targeting Brentford just makes sense. I've watched a lot of Brentford this season, and yeah, look, they score a lot of goals, but right now, their injury list is pretty long, and that defense is targetable. If you own Haaland, I would seriously consider captaining him. I know a few of you will have him, and it's my job, I consider it my job, to remove any of my personal bias from final results. Just because I don't own Haaland shouldn't impact his placing on my rankings every week, and I'm going to be backing him to be the top scoring premium in Game Week 21. Salah takes third place for a number of reasons. First off, I just believe he's got the toughest fixture. He's also been a little bit inconsistent in the midweek away games, and I expect him to be marked from minute 1 to minute 90. He'll have had the least amount of recovery time, and although that's not the biggest factor, if you add that in with all of the others, with Forest being the fixture, away from home, performance in kickoff in terms of his profiles, all of it combined, I just can't put Salah above Haaland and Palmer. I respect the Forest defense too much for that. And look, it's not like Salah's been a historical midweek monster either. So yeah, Haaland in number 1, Palmer in second place, and for my team, Coley will get the armband with Salah getting the vice captaincy. If you've enjoyed this one, and if you're new around here, then hit subscribe, drop a like on the video, and I'll speak to you in the next one. Peace.